Hello, hello. It is another Wednesday, and I am back with you this week. I missed y'all last week. I was on a much needed vacation, and I am super excited to be here with you. So, if you have been paying attention at all to any of the headlines, you have undoubtedly seen that home prices were supposed to crash this year, and the market was falling, and home sales were at an all-time record low. And a lot of people have been waiting for that to show up here in the Georgia real estate market. And so today we are going to kind of talk about exactly what has happened here locally with the real estate market and what is expected to happen for the second part of this year. So today we sent out a newsletter to people that we are helping and working with right now. And one of the topics that I included in the newsletter, and I feel like today is like such a perfect opportunity to talk about this, is I get this question a lot from y'all that I talk to you on the phone, and that is just how humid is it in Georgia? And that is such a hard question to answer because one, like I don't know what level of humidity you're used to, and two, like how do you describe humidity? Like I'm not a meteorologist. I don't check the humidity percentage every single day because, well, I'm used to it, and here we just know like yeah, it's going to be humid. So but this is the perfect time of year that if you're thinking about making a visit to Georgia and you want to test out how humid it is, like now is the time to come. July and August is the perfect time. And in fact, we have some clients coming at the end of this week just for that very reason. They want to see like how humid is it in Georgia. They're coming all the way from Hawaii. And I'm really kind of nervous because the wife's like, I can't do humidity. And I'm like, well, I don't know if Georgia is going to be the place for you because it's going to be really humid. So I'm curious to see where you're watching from and where you're joining us from. Please let me know in the comments. I always love to see where you're watching from and how humid is it where you live. I would love to know the answer to that. We've got Carl watching us from New Jersey. Welcome. I am excited to have you here tonight and excited to be back with y'all. Last week I was on vacation and I was down in Siesta Key, Florida, and it was really nice. The beach, gorgeous, beautiful. I've been going there for a couple of years now with a really good friend, and it was so hot. If you weren't like in the water or with a cold drink in your hand, it was almost like unbearable to be outside. But nevertheless, we had a really, really great time, and it was fun to get away and relax for a little bit. We've got Lisa from Maryland. Welcome, Lisa. Thank you for joining us. So tonight on the live stream, we are going to be talking about the market crash or what market crash and answering your questions. So of course, if you have any questions about making a move, or if you have any questions about the real estate market, make sure that you go ahead and drop those in the comments, and we'll answer those throughout the live stream tonight as we're kind of talking through this. So, like I said, we're talking about what has happened to the supposed crash. And I say supposed because I have a lot of clients, or some, that have been waiting on the sidelines and they've had flexibility, and they were waiting for either mortgage rates to come down or for prices to come down, and they're still waiting. So I thought today we could kind of dive into a little bit more about why this is happening, what is happening, and why what we thought was going to happen hasn't happened. So first off, obviously interest rates are much, much higher than what they were at this time period last year, double what they were last year, right? And so when interest rates started increasing, buyers started pulling back. And typically, whenever buyers start pulling back from the market, there's less demand. Typically, home prices will fall. And that's exactly what the Fed is trying to do. While they're trying to combat inflation, they are trying to tamp down inflation. They're trying to tamp down the rise in prices of things. And so you would think that that would happen in the real estate market because interest rates have more than doubled. It's way more expensive now to buy a home than it was last year. And yet home prices have not fallen. And so why haven't they fallen? Well, let's dig into that. So I'm going to share with you a recent article that was shared on the Atlanta Business Journal Chronicle. What's it called? The Atlanta Business Chronicle. And so it says low housing supply expected to keep Atlanta mortgages high. And it goes into this and it says that the Atlanta monthly mortgage rates are up 119% since 2019. Okay, that's a little bit of an inflated thing because they were at record lows, right? So they've doubled. And nationwide, the interest rates have gone to about 6.3% for 15-year mortgages, almost 7% for 30-year mortgages. And a key factor to keeping all of this high is that we've had a lack of supply in the housing market. So one thing that I thought was interesting, it says the supply for new for sale homes in Atlanta in June was 32% lower than this time last year. So a key factor as to why home prices have held so steady, especially here in the Atlanta market, is because overall we have an incredibly lack of inventory. There's 32% less homes for sale right now on the market than there was even a year ago. And so when you have low supply and you still have demand and a lot of demand, then that allows sellers to still keep their prices where they can set the prices because they have such a scarce resource. They have something that everyone wants. And so that is why home prices are holding steady. Let's see, let me get back to my screen here. So it goes on to say that despite high interest rate, prices aren't expected to decrease in the near future because of that limited supply. This is why we have not had the home crash that all the experts or doomsdayers were predicting that we were going to have, is because all of a sudden sellers, because of the interest rates, they decided they're not going to sell. And that created a drastic tightening of the availability of homes for sale, which then has put upward prices on home prices. So let me share with you another article that I thought was very interesting and really kind of talks about exactly why people aren't selling their homes. Let's see here. All right, so this Yahoo article, this was reported everywhere, but this says the housing market is so tight because 90% of homeowners locked in lower mortgage rates before last year's surge. So the key point here is that a report from Redfin found that almost 92% of homeowners have mortgages at an interest rate below 6%. So if those homeowners go out and sell their house today, they're looking at a more expensive mortgage to go sell their house. It says many homeowners are unwilling to part with lower rates they secured prior to the spike. A lot of these homeowners have rates in the high 2s and low 3s. They are looking at more than doubling their mortgage interest rate to sell and go out and buy another house. And that is a large part of why the housing market's tight inventory doesn't look like it's going to get better much soon because of this. Let's see. It says, in fact, 82% of homeowners have a mortgage rate below 5% and 62% below 4%. And here you have almost 24% of homeowners have a mortgage rate below 3%. That's the highest proportion with a rate that low on record. And it says the stats are the primary drivers of the shortage of new home listings. The number of newly listed houses, as well as the number of total listings, have both plunged to the lowest on record for this time of year. Yeah, that's just crazy. So I'm just kind of curious, if you've locked in a low interest rate, is that preventing you from selling? And what we're seeing here locally in the market is that most people would be potential sellers that would sell in the market. Maybe they recently had a baby, or they want to buy a new construction home, or they simply just don't like their house anymore. They want to be in a specific neighborhood. We would usually have people that would sell their house all the time and just move across town. Well, we don't have that happening in the market right now. And they're not making those moves. Local people are not really making those moves because it's really expensive right now for them to do so. Even with the equity that they have in their home, those high interest rates are making it really unaffordable for them to, the math just isn't mathing, as the kids say, and it doesn't really make sense for them to sell their house to move into something that's much more expensive than where they currently are. So a lot of these people are kind of trapped in their houses, and they're thinking like, yeah, we'll just stay here for a little while longer and make this work. And in large part is why we are where we are. Let's see here. I'll share with you some more data that we have. I thought this was really interesting. This was from Zillow, a Zillow research analysis report. This is for Atlanta. And here you see that home values have not gone down. There's a tiny bit of a dip that happened, and yet home prices continue to increase. We are experiencing about 1 to 2% home price increases month over month. And you see that in the data that Zillow displayed. Home prices are not going backwards. Now, this is for the Atlanta level or area. It showed that that dark blue line is the 2023, you can see that on the screen there, number of new listings. And year over year, the Atlanta area is down 32.5%. That is a lot. And I'll show you some more data that kind of goes back to like pre-pandemic levels and shows you that we're drastically way behind where a normal market is. And so this is a large part of what's keeping those upward pressures on prices, and it's why we haven't seen a crash. I often get questions about rentals, and rental rates have drastically increased here in the metro Atlanta area, and that's kind of normalizing now to come back to a normal appreciation, but rents are still pretty high. So the average rent is almost $2,000 in Atlanta area, and that's still showing a 2.7% year over year increase. So if you're just joining us on the live stream, we're talking about like why the market hasn't crashed here in Georgia and what's expected to happen for the second half of the year and what you can expect if you're considering making a move. If you're just joining us, make sure you let me know in the comments where you're watching from and say hello. And of course, if you have a question about the housing market, make sure that you drop those in the comments, and I'd love to answer those questions for you while we are talking and chatting here tonight about what's going on in the Georgia real estate market. All right, so let's get back to this data. Lawrence Yun was the chief economist for the National Association of Realtors, and he stated that the available inventory strongly impacts home sales too. Existing home sales activity is down sizably due to the current supply being roughly half the level of 2019. So that's pretty significant, y'all. And this is across the United States. The existing home sale activity is down because the current supply is down. So when you see those headlines that say home sales are at a record all-time low, lowest level on record since, I saw one that said 2012. Well, it's because the inventory is so low. There's not any houses out there for people to buy. So another challenging factor of that too is there's not any affordable houses out there for people to buy. I spoke with one of my really great lenders today, and he said, yeah, we've got a lot of people pre-approved that could buy a house if they could find one that they could afford. So affordability is a huge factor as well. This graph is going all the way back to 2017, and it's showing that year over year, listings are down almost 26% nationwide as a whole, I showed you the stats for the Atlanta area. That was down almost 40%. So that's pretty significant. It says in the final week of June, we noted that inventory actually declined on a year-over-year basis for the first time since last April. This substantial slowdown was primarily driven by fewer potential sellers opting to list their home. Hello, they had all those really great low interest rates. And the market, which lapped the period of higher inventory growth that started in May of last year. So if you're considering making a move to Georgia and you're like, okay, what does this mean for me? What do I do with this information? Well, what you do with this information is if you have the ability and the flexibility to buy something now versus later, or make that move now versus later or next year, I strongly suggest that you do this as soon as you can. And the reason is that home prices, the demand for homes here, especially in the metro Atlanta area, are not going to decline anytime soon. I'm talking about for years. We have a tremendously undersupply of houses in the metro Atlanta area. Let me go back to, let's see. Let me go back to that article that was shared in the Atlanta Business Chronicle. They said, I want to get this right. Let me pull it back up for y'all. Okay, where did it say this here? Oh, a Zillow report from June detailed that Atlanta needs over 133,000 households to meet the demand. That is an incredibly high amount of homes that we need to fulfill the need that is in Atlanta. So home prices, y'all, are not coming down anytime soon. And in fact, many economists are predicting that as interest rates have stabilized, albeit they're higher, they're in the upper sixes, there's not quite as much variability or volatility even. Buyers are getting kind of used to and accepting this new normal. And the point I'm trying to make here is that, buyers are getting used to the way that the market is, and they're like, okay, yeah, we're ready to buy. Let's go find a house to buy. And there's hardly any homes to buy. So that's putting these upward pressures on pricing. And if and when interest rates do relax a little bit, well, even more people that were sitting on the sidelines that have been wanting to buy a house are going to be like, oh, okay, now's my time. And prices are just going to have even more upward pressure on those prices. So if you have the ability to buy now, it's only going to get more and more expensive as the years go by, as the months go by. I've seen this. I have a really great family that I'm working with right now, and they've had the flexibility. They're currently renting. And they're like, hey, my lease is not due or up until the end of the year. We have flexibility. When we find the right house, we'll buy it. Well, we've been kind of waiting for that perfect house. Side note, y'all, there is no perfect house. You're always going to have to make some sort of compromise. And the homes of what they're seeing just continually to get more and more expensive. And now they keep comparing what they saw 6 months ago and wishing that they would have bought 6 months ago compared to what's on the market right now. And the hard lesson here is that it's only going to continue to get more expensive. Now, the good news is that interest rates hopefully should, if history is any indicator, should come back down again. Now, for sure, they're not going to get back down to like the 3s or the 2s, but experts and economists are predicting that 2024, we should see high 5s and high 5s. Get it? Okay, just saw it. High 5s. And you always have the ability in the future to refinance into that lower mortgage rate. What you can't do is you can't rewind and go back and pay less for your house than what you originally paid for it. So that is definitely something to keep in mind. Carl says, why aren't the builders building more new homes? Please explain. great question. So, if we go all the way back to the housing market crash of 2002, 2007, 2008, there were a ton of builders out there in the market. And a lot of those builders went bankrupt during that housing boom. And because so many risky loans were made during that time period, a lot of builders went out of business, right? Because they got stuck holding all of this. As a result of all those risky loans, banks kind of overcorrected and they made lending really, really difficult for these builders. So a lot of these builders saw no future in developing homes anymore, and they exited the market altogether and went into a different industry. The only people that were left were your medium to bigger builders. And so if you see locally, I see this here day in and day out, pretty much all of the new homes that we deal with are from big, large building companies like Lennar, D.R. Horton, Century Communities. And then we have a lot of medium-sized local builders. But back in 2000, 2007, 2008, you had a lot of smaller builders that were building a lot of inventory. Those people are completely gone. And so we have way less builders, and the building industry is really gun shy from what happened in 2007, 2008. And we've been on a slow undersupply of new construction starts for like more than a decade, and we still have not caught up. So even though here locally, and I'm sure probably where you live, it seems like there's new construction development happening all over the place, locals here complain about it. They're like, they're just building everything and cutting all the trees down, and we're not going to have anything left anymore. And in some ways, they're probably right, but we still don't have near enough supply of what we need to meet the future growth demand of what needs to take place, not only here locally, but just nationally as well. Zillow recently did a really great study that just basically said we are in for a long haul of a ride to not having enough homes to meet the demand. Now, one thing that builders have been doing a lot of recently is building a lot of apartment complexes and a lot of rental units. So that market is expected to bring some relief to rental rates as all of these apartments hit the market. And so rents are supposed to get a little bit of relief because there's all of this big supply that's about to hit the market. But resale homes or single family residential housing does not have that influx of inventory that's on the way. Even with the pace that builders are building now, it's still not enough. So builders are building, they're not building enough, and they also can't build them fast enough. So I hope that answers your question. We got Marlene watching us from Pennsylvania. Thank you for watching and joining us tonight. Marlene says that corporations are taking over in a large part. Yeah, more money, more to throw around, more to do with, right? But when it comes to builders, especially here locally, y'all, we have some really great medium-sized builders that build fantastic houses. And it's one of my favorite things to do is to help you find a really good new construction home if that's what you're in the market for, and kind of giving you that personal localized knowledge to say, hey, I've worked with these builders before. My clients love them. This is a builder I'm like, I don't know if I would buy a home from them, and kind of giving you the good and the bad and the ugly of what it comes like when it comes to local builders. So excellent question, Carl. Thank you for asking that question. And if you're joining us and watching, and if you have questions, make sure you drop those in the comment, and we will definitely answer those questions. So thank you. All right, so going back to this data, let's see what we have here. We talked about how new listings were lower than previous years. Okay, so if you just think that this is a problem that is localized to like big metro Atlanta areas or big metro areas across the country like Atlanta, no, this is happening in 99% of the country of those top 200 metros, listings are down all across the country. So this is a problem that's going to persist nationwide for a while. And I even saw an article that just kind of said homes are selling faster these days. We still have kind of multiple offer situations going on in some instances. And this is likely going to be the new normal for a long time now because of the severe lack of inventory of what we have. The only thing that we can introduce into the market outside of continuing to put upward pressure on interest rates, which that really sucks, right? Is to have a huge supply of inventory come on the market to kind of alleviate all of this pressure. And again, like we just discussed with Carl, there's not like super large blocks of inventory that's coming on the market that the builders are just holding on to and waiting to release. No, they can't build them fast enough and can't keep up. And it's not like this huge wave of foreclosures are coming, or did I just say floor closures? Foreclosures are coming. Yeah, and so that huge surge of inventory, it's just not on the horizon. So unfortunately, the home prices are what they are, and they're only going to get more expensive. So if you're on the fence or if you're thinking about it, my biggest advice is to just jump in where you can, get something, and start building equity where you can so that you can sell your house in a couple of years and get what you really want. And this kind of graph shows that, this is according to a realtor.com study, is that the big surprise of 2023 that goes counterintuitive to all of those articles about the market crashing is that, in fact, home prices have done nothing but kind of increase. And we had a little bit of slowdown, right? When interest rates first started kind of going haywire and funky in the third and fourth quarter of last year. And it kind of bottomed out in January. And then we start seeing home prices continue to increase. And since January of 2023, we've seen a 3% month over month increase in home prices and 1% year over year. So that's really important for you to factor in, is that likely any type of crash that we had, it already happened. So Marlene says that your friend owns a house in Gwinnett County and will probably be moving there in the next 2 years. Well, there is a lot of great options in towns in Gwinnett County to choose from, and it's just down the road from where I am, and we help a lot of people relocate there. So that is definitely a really great area to consider, and I'm sure your friend will love having you close by. All right, so I'm here to answer your questions. If you have any questions about making a move, or if you have any questions about the housing market, make sure you go ahead and ask those, and we'll make sure to answer those questions for you. One of the things that you have available to you right now to kind of help make buying a house a little bit more affordable is you can do something called an interest rate buy down. And although we're seeing upward pressure on home prices, we do have a little bit more flexibility right now with sellers to negotiate some closing costs. And we did not have that ability a year ago. And so that's kind of one of the pros of higher interest rates, and that there's not such kind of crazy buyer demand. But for some houses in some areas, we are able to negotiate with sellers to pay some closing cost. And a popular money saving strategy right now is to take that closing cost and use it to buy down your interest rate. Now, how much that's going to save you really depends on how much money you're able to negotiate and kind of what interest rates are doing currently. It's been something a little bit all across the board, but I recently had a really great scenario with a buyer, and we knew that we had the ability to negotiate quite a bit of money from the seller. We knew that we had about $15,000 that we could play with. And so we looked at two different scenarios. One was, let's reduce the price of the house by $15,000 and let's see what the monthly payment would be that way. The second option would be to keep the price where it's at and let's ask for $15,000 from the seller, and let's use that $15,000 to buy down your interest rate. And by doing that interest rate buy down and taking the $15,000 and doing it that way versus reducing the price of the home by $15,000, we were able to save them $280 every single month on their mortgage payment. Now, would you rather pay $15,000 more for a house and get $15,000 in seller credits to buy down the interest rate and save $280, or have a better number on your mortgage of $15,000 less? Of course, you want to save the $280 a month every single month on your mortgage payment, especially if this is going to be a house that you're going to be staying in for a while and something that you're not immediately paying off. That would be the best scenario for you there. So there's a lot of creative ways that you can look at right now in the market of how to save money. And you really need to make sure that you're working with a real estate agent that can guide you and connect you with the right people that can help you explore all of these different options and what is best for you in your scenario, because not all real estate agents are made equally. Just how I'm sure in your profession, people aren't made equally there as well. So you really want to make sure, especially right now in this market, that you're working with someone that's knowledgeable and that you can trust and that has the experience to guide you through this and give you some good advice and tools so that you can make the best decision for you and your family. All right, so I'm curious, those that are watching, if you're thinking about making a move, I would love to know where you're thinking about making a move to. Marlene says that she loves Lawrenceville. Lawrenceville is a really great town in Gwinnett County, and it has a great downtown area with lots of really good restaurants. And it's one of my favorite things there to do is go there and eat. I love to eat. And there's really charming restaurants that they have in Lawrenceville. All right, we have Super Trebo. I was the guy that was in Augusta and moved to Myrtle Beach, got a condo. Now prices are outrageous here. And even in Augusta now, back in 2020, there was a 2-bedroom for $121. Now it's $185. That's too high. Yeah, home prices have drastically increased over the past couple of years, especially here in Georgia. Pretty much we've seen on average between 15 to 20% year over year home price appreciation. Let me tell you, if we could all go back in 2019, 2020 and buy a piece of real estate and hold on to it and then have the ability to sell it now, we would all go do that, right? But I can guarantee you that it's 2023. If we flash forward 2 years, we're all going to go back and say, man, if I could have bought a home in 2023, I would have done that too. And although home prices are not going to appreciate the 15 to 20%, because God help us, who would ever be able to afford houses if it kept growing that much, right? Definitely wages aren't growing by 15 to 20% every single year. But home prices are still expected to go up, and it's still going to be a really good investment. If I try to go back to Augusta, maybe when prices go down, there's a townhome for $185. It's still not sold. They have it priced too high, and it's been for sale for 6 months. That sounds like a great opportunity. So we still have sellers out there that have overpriced property. I just talked to a great client that's thinking about moving here, and he's coming out next week to look at houses. And we looked at a house that he had favorited, and he said, "Hey, this looks to be like a good house. Why hasn't it sold yet?" And I'm like, let me check on that. And so I look into it. Pictures look good, photographed well. Great neighborhood. I'm like, let me see what other home prices are selling for in this neighborhood. Well, the agent has this house priced at $500. The most recent sale, comparable sale, the highest one was $450. It's the exact same house, same square footage, same bedroom, almost same yard size. Doesn't have like a $50,000 pool in the backyard. So there's no reason that this house should be priced $50,000 more than the most recent sale. And so that tells me that it's just a couple of things. It's either a really uneducated, stubborn seller, or it's a bad agent, or it's a combination of both. And so those are still out there. So you do have a good opportunity to, work with a seller. Sometimes it takes that seller being on the market for 6 months before they get desperate or before they're just hard-headed and before they realize like, oh, my house is not worth this. So yeah, I would definitely go after those opportunities. And if you don't already have a great agent there in Augusta and we haven't connected you with one, I have a fantastic partner that can definitely help you navigate that. So definitely reach out to me. For any of y'all watching, my contact information is directly below this video and you can watch it or you can reach out and we would love to help you. Wanting to move to, Peggy says that you were wanting to move to Woodstock until prices got beyond my reach. Now I'm looking at Rome. What do you think of Rome? Rome is a really good town. And yeah, that's unfortunately one of the byproducts of what has happened in this market is that sometimes we start thinking that we want to be in one area and then we realize like, oh, home prices here have grown so much. Now I need to consider another area. And so we find ourselves kind of going more and more north or out and you come across a different town. But one of the good things, Peggy, is that you can afford Rome. And then in a couple of years, someone's going to be in your situation where they're going to want to buy in Rome and can't afford that. So they're going to look at another area and you're going to be sitting on a piece of property that you bought back then when it was more affordable. So definitely that is a good town to consider. And if you don't already have someone that you're working with there, reach out to me. And I also have a really great agent partner there that I'd love to connect you with. But that is definitely a good town that a lot of people love. Also a really great downtown area. Y'all are asking some great questions. So thank you for asking those. And of course, if you're watching and have a question, make sure that you drop those in the chat below because that's what we're here for every single week is to make sure that we're answering your questions and keeping you informed on what's going on in the Georgia real estate market. If you're new to my channel, I go live pretty much every Wednesday unless I am traveling. Most of my travel is to real estate conferences. Last week I was on vacation. But if you haven't already liked and subscribed to my channel, please go ahead and do that now. You'll get notified anytime I go live, which is every Wednesday. And of course, we have a live, not a live stream, but we have a recorded video that goes up every single Sunday where I educate you on what is going on neighborhoods and towns and why you should consider one town over the other. Oh, good question, Carl. How do you know if you have a good realtor and can you have more than one realtor? You will know that you have a good real estate agent if you are asking them questions about the market, about neighborhoods, home buying strategies that they can see and what do they feel like is a good strategy for helping you with your budget get into the price point that you want? What's a realistic expectation? Having that conversation with them. And if they're able to give you very detailed answers, that's a good sign that you're working with a good agent. I would also, in this day and age, want to go to Google and see what the reviews are like. You want to make sure that you're working with someone that has a good reputation online because a lot of real estate is online these days. And that kind of social proof, I feel like, is really important. Typically, if an agent doesn't have very many reviews online, it could be an indication that they don't do a lot of business. And if I'm buying a house and I wasn't in the real estate industry, but knowing what I know, I would want to work with someone that sells a lot of homes. And the reason for that is that I'm not saying that there can't be newer agents that aren't good, but in this market, you need an agent that can tell you like, hey, let me partner you with a great lender that can educate you on doing a rate buy down or giving you the advice of knowing that, hey, you're likely going to be in a multiple offer situation. And here's some tools that we have available of how we can win in a multiple offer situation. On the other side, I've been where I represent a seller and sometimes you get offers in from real estate agents that don't have a whole lot of experience. And I've seen situations, I just had it happen. An agent, her buyer, we got $10,000 more out of them for a sale on a home that they really didn't need to pay $10,000 over asking price. And my job is to get the highest price for my seller that I can. And if that real estate agent would have asked me a little bit more questions, they would have known they didn't need to go that high. So, just having good conversations, go with your gut, ask for recommendations, and kind of look for reviews online to see, do they have any reviews online, and read through those. And to answer your second part, can you have more than one realtor? No. And as a real estate agent, I would highly suggest that you don't do this. One, just because as an agent, if you're working with a good agent, they're putting in a lot of time, energy, and effort behind the scenes to help you. And we don't get paid at all until you buy a house and close on a house. So there's a lot of time invested up front, and sometimes it doesn't work out. And sometimes you have buyers that end up not buying, and that's okay because that's just part of, it all kind of happens and it's part of the nature of the job. But one thing you should know is that whenever you work with a real estate agent, they are going to eventually, some agents do this up front at the very beginning. Some agents will have you sign this whenever you make an offer on a home, but they're going to have you sign an agency agreement. Here in Georgia, we call it the buyer brokerage engagement agreement. Basically, it's a formal document saying that, hey, I'm hiring you to be my real estate agent, and it gives your real estate agent permission to be your fiduciary responsibility. It's that legal document that says, hey, you as an agent have to look out for my financial best interest. You have a fiduciary responsibility to do that. And if you have that signed in Georgia, that for sure prevents you from working with another real estate agent. Now, sometimes it's happened where you're working with an agent and you realize like, I'm not sure that I'm being served the very best way that that agent can be serving me, or I feel like maybe there might be an opportunity to work with someone else that could help me get to my goal of home ownership, or they might have a little bit more knowledge. And in that situation, if you haven't signed that buyer brokerage engagement agreement, it's just as simple as saying like, hey, sorry, don't want to work with you anymore. And you can go on and work with another agent. If you do have that agreement signed, that is something that you would have to go back to that agent and have that conversation with them of how to get out of that agreement. Now, although it technically is a legally binding agreement, and each brokerage handles it a little bit different, I'll share with you how it's handled with me. If we had signed that agreement together and you as my client came to me and said, hey, I would like to go work with a different real estate agent. I don't feel like my needs are being serviced here very well. I, one, would take it as a learning opportunity and kind of want to know a little bit more about how I could do better in the future. But two, I'm not going to want to hold you hostage and saying like, no, you have to work with me. That's not going to create like any kind of goodwill, or you're not going to have a good experience being forced to work with an agent that you don't want to. And clearly I wouldn't want to work with someone that feels like I'm doing not a good job for them. And so 9 times out of 10, it's something that's just like, oh, okay, great. All right, you're released from the agreement. I wish you the best of luck. So just know that you may have to encounter that if you want to go work with a different agent and you've already signed an agreement. What strategy would you recommend for an out-of-state buyer? At what point do you fly in if there are not many homes that meet your criteria? So I love that question. And I think it's so important that if you have never been to an area that you're thinking about moving to, it's so important to go there for that exploratory trip, regardless if there aren't very many homes on the market. So what that does for you as a potential buyer, and why I love for the clients that I work with to do this, is that it makes it that much easier that if the perfect house comes on the market and you're in California or New Jersey and you're like, wow, okay, that house is perfect for me. And if we're able to say, yes, you've been to that area, you've been to that town, you love that town, then that makes it easy for me to say, okay, let's go do a video tour of this house and let's FaceTime and let's make sure that you really love it. And then we could potentially talk about putting in an offer and getting you to fly down while we have it kind of under contract. There's still a way to get out of the contract if you saw it in person and didn't like it. That's more of a detailed conversation, but it just makes that process so much easier for you to have a lot more confidence to pull the trigger if the perfect home comes on the market when you're not physically able to be there in person to see it. For sure, unless you have a very, very high risk tolerance, you're not going to make that decision to do that, likely, if you've never been to the area. So I always recommend coming to the area for an exploratory trip so that you can get familiar with the town or towns that you're considering. I can't tell you how many times we've helped people who they come into town thinking that they want to buy in one area, and then they end up falling in love with another nearby town and they're like, oh, this is a dream town. This is where I want to be. And then we kind of like shift their home buying search. So that is definitely something to consider. Now, if you've already been here or to the area that you want to move to, and there's just not a whole lot of homes coming on the market that meet your criteria, I would say that we got to have kind of like that tough conversation of saying, is it because the price point is getting to be too expensive? Or do we have too many criteria that we're trying to fit into a box and it's just not working here? So then we can say, okay, do we need to expand our search area a little bit? Is there another nearby town that might give you exactly what you're looking for? So I would have those conversations and make sure that we have realistic expectations for our budget and the areas that we're looking for. But for sure, I would recommend as an out-of-state buyer making that first initial trip. And then I would say that, if you're able to get 4 or 5 houses together that are potential maybes, like that's a good indicator that should give you confidence to pull the trigger and make that home buying trip. Carl is asking if that buyer brokerage agreement is good for 30 days. So in Georgia, it's a negotiable amount of time, and typically you will see that agents will fill in a default of 90 to 120 days, so 3 to 6 months. It's not a set time period, and that's kind of like the general standard practice here in Georgia among real estate agents is to do between 3 to 6 months. So definitely check that and make sure you know what you're getting into before you sign that, and know that usually you have the ability to get out of that if you want to, but it's not a guaranteed thing. The brokerage does technically, the agreement is between you and the brokerage that agent works with, it's not between you and that agent itself. So technically my brokerage, if someone wanted to get out of an agreement with me, my brokerage could say, okay, great, you don't want to work with Sarah. Let me go partner you with Barbara, and she's now going to help you. That's your new agent that you're assigned to. Most brokerages, at least reputable ones, don't want to hold you to that because they don't want that ill will out there, and they don't want you going online and posting negative reviews and saying that you had a terrible experience working with that brokerage. They want you to work with someone that you want to work with. So that is kind of how the philosophy, I feel like, should be. And that's the best way of doing business. And I can't guarantee that they're all going to be like that, but something to know. So great questions. Well, thank you so much for joining me tonight on the live stream. And of course, if you haven't liked and subscribed to my channel, please make sure that you do that now so that you can get alerted every single time I go live every Wednesday and a new video is posted on Sunday. If you're thinking about making a move to Georgia, my contact information is directly below this video. You can email me, you can call me, you can send me a message on Facebook or Instagram. That happens a lot too. And I would love to help you in any way that I can. And if you're thinking about making a move to an area that I don't serve, I would love to connect you with a really great agent that I already know and have vetted and have sent clients to in the past. So feel free to reach out to me with those recommendations as well. And of course, I will see y'all next Wednesday. Please join me again for the live stream next Wednesday. And of course, the videos that we post every single Sunday. See y'all next week.